HD2 Greenfield, a Cumulus media station. Download the free app in the Google Play and App Store.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's time for...
It's the Real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Ticket, 1430 AM and 99.5 HD2.
What's going on? It's the Real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy Sports Ticket. Hopefully you've had a nice week. We have finally made it to Friday. Thank you so much for tuning in, no matter how you're tuning in, whether that's on YouTube, Twitter, 1430 AM in your car. Maybe you're listening via that Indy Sports Ticket app. We've got a big weekend, and it starts tonight. Indiana going on the road, taking on Nebraska, Purdue, playing Texas A&M in hoops here in Indianapolis. And then, of course, on Sunday, we got Colts going to Denver to take on the Broncos. And I've been thinking a lot about this game. I was pretty clear yesterday that, look, I got to be honest, I do not expect for the Indianapolis Colts to win this game because the Denver Broncos have a better defense than the Colts. They have a better quarterback than the Colts, and they have a better head coach than the Colts. And last night, I took some time, and I was looking at the Broncos, and I noticed something. The Denver Broncos are the SMU Mustangs of the NFL. They both have a horse as their mascot. And if the Broncos make the playoffs, it'll be because they beat a bunch of bad teams, just like how SMU made the college football playoff because they beat a bunch of bad teams. SMU hasn't beaten anybody good all year. Neither have the Denver Broncos. And that's kind of my take today. The Broncos haven't beaten anybody good. So there's some hope for the Colts to be able to go in there and win on the road in Denver. The issue, though, is the Colts haven't beaten anybody good either. Okay, the Broncos this year are 8-5 overall, but they are 1-5 against teams over 500. The Colts are also 1-5 against teams over 500 this year. So two teams that really struggle to beat other good teams. Okay, the Broncos' one win over an opponent that's currently over 500 was the Tampa Bay Buccaneers really early in the year. And for the Colts, it was the Steelers really early in the year when Justin Fields was still playing quarterback. Okay, but that is the hope for the Colts this week. The Broncos haven't beaten anyone good all year. They haven't. That is the reality of their situation. The Broncos have benefited from an extremely easy schedule. 7 of their 8 wins have come against teams that are under 500. And all 5 of their losses have come against teams that are over 500. They appear to be incapable of beating good teams. And over the last 3 weeks, we have seen more and more glimpses of what could potentially be a good Colts team. If you want to, do this glass half full all the way, right? The Colts are 2-1 since Anthony Richardson returned from being benched after the whole helmet tap out situation. And if you think that was bad, I don't know if you watched 49ers and Rams last night, but there was a linebacker for the 49ers who was like, you know what? I quit. I'm done. And he didn't come back out of the locker room after halftime. Pretty insane. Anyway, back to Anthony Richardson and the important role that he's going to play in this game on Sunday. Once again, Colts, they're 2-1 since he returned. And part of why he's been so good since his return has been his legs, right? And not even necessarily just the quarterback run game, right? Which, as we all know, Shane Steichen has, ran Anthony Richardson more ever since he's returned from being benched, right? Having somewhere around 8 to 12 carries a game, which is a pretty good number for him. That's the number that I was begging for him to be at all offseason and even in the early parts of the season. But Anthony Richardson's legs extend beyond that, right? His ability to escape pressure, to escape sacks, to avoid negative plays has been huge for the offense, right? Because obviously, 2nd and 10 is way better than 2nd and 16 after taking a sack on first down. Okay, it is, right? That's a very simple, basic thing that everyone understands. And that ability to avoid sacks and to avoid pressure will be important this week because the Broncos love to blitz. The Broncos have blitzed on 31% of their opponents' dropbacks this year. That is the 4th highest mark in the NFL. So Anthony Richardson is going to face pressure this week against the Broncos for two reasons. One, Colts offensive line, not very good. Two, the Broncos blitz a ton. Three, the Broncos get home when they blitz. They lead the NFL in sacks with 47 on the season. That is a little over 3.5 sacks per game. Keep that number in mind. Here's Shane Steichen yesterday talking about Anthony Richardson, his ability to avoid pressure, and how important that's been for him and how important it will be for them this week.
I think he's done a hell of a job. Even when he has had pressure, he's done a great job escaping it and creating plays with his legs and get out of the pocket. What he's been able to do these last couple of weeks, he continues to just keep going and rising. His level of play has been picking up. He's doing a hell of a job.
Is the next step for him to, maybe anticipate where the pressure's coming from, or maybe start to recognize where it's coming from?
Yeah, that's part of that's part of the process too. The weekly preparation, we go through the blitz meetings, we do the walkthroughs, we do the practice, give him multiple looks, so he knows where his issues are at.
Oh, the process. Shane Steichen loves to talk about the process. It's great. It's actually kind of funny. Anyway, that was Shane Steichen, Colts head coach, talking about Anthony Richardson's ability to avoid pressure, and there at the end talking about how important it is for him to identify blitzes and things of that nature. And Anthony Richardson's ability to avoid sacks and identify blitzes and things of that nature will be vital in this game for the Colts. When you look at the games where the Broncos surrendered the most points, it was when they faced semi-mobile to absolutely mobile quarterbacks. They gave up 26 to Geno Smith, a guy who's more than capable of taking off and picking up a first down with his legs. They gave up 23 to Justin Herbert, another guy, very athletic, very capable of escaping pressure. They gave up 23 to him. They gave up 41 to Lamar Jackson and the Ravens, obviously the best running quarterback probably in NFL history. And then they gave up 32 to Jameis Winston, not a scrambler per se, but a guy more than athletic enough to avoid pressure. All four of those guys had the necessary athleticism to avoid the rush, just like our guy, Anthony Richardson, here in Indianapolis. When you look at the Broncos and the 5 losses that they have suffered this season, with the exception of the Chiefs, the 4 of the 5 games that they lost this year were because of their inability to get to the quarterback. Okay, when the game that they lost to the Seahawks, they only had 2 sacks. The game that they lost to the Chargers, they only had 3 sacks. That falls under their 3.5 sacks per game average on the season. Against the Ravens, they only had 1 sack. And then against the Steelers, they only had 2 sacks. Okay, the Broncos average 3.5 sacks per game. That number leads the NFL. When they don't get to that number, when they don't get to 4 sacks or more, then they tend to lose. And when they do get to that number, 3 sacks and up, they tend to win. Let's look at their wins. When they beat the Buccaneers, their 1 win over a team with a record of over 500, they had 7 sacks. When they beat the Jets, they had 5 sacks. When they beat the Saints, they had 6 sacks. And when they beat the Raiders, they had 5. Then they had 3 sacks in their other wins. And 3 of their other wins, excuse me. The only team that they beat without 3 sacks or more was against the Panthers before Bryce Young remembered how to play quarterback and started playing well again. The Broncos are 7-1 when they record 3 sacks or more. And so it is absolutely vital for Anthony Richardson to be good at avoiding pressure, because I don't expect for this, Colts offensive line to just not allow any pressures the whole game. I mean, as I said earlier, the Broncos blitz a ton, and they have generated more sacks than any other team in the NFL. So Anthony Richardson will be pressured this week. There is no doubt about it. So he's going to have to use his athleticism to avoid all of that. And then this offensive line has to play well. And potentially it will. They've got guys on the verge of being healthy. Ryan Kelly will be back this week. Bernard Raymond played 2 weeks ago. Dalton Tucker has been playing. Quentin Nelson, he should hopefully be better with a week off. He hasn't missed a game all year. Those 4 guys should all be good to go. It doesn't seem like Braden Smith's going to play. He's apparently got something personal happening. Apparently it's very serious. That's what Shane Steichen said yesterday. So it doesn't look like he's going to play. There was also a report that came out that he could potentially not play the rest of the year. That would obviously be a big deal. But Matt Gonsalves, rookie third-round pick out of Pittsburgh. He held his own at right tackle a couple weeks ago against the Patriots. The snaps that he's had at left tackle this year in the games that Bernard Raymond missed, he was a solid option. Not great, not terrible, probably about what you would expect from a third-round pick. Okay, and the PFF numbers say that he's gotten better throughout the season. So this offensive line has to hold up. Okay, this thing that Chris Ballard preaches to us about has got to hold up. Okay, because if it doesn't, then this could be a rout. That's just the true nature of it. And look, so the offensive line has to hold up, and Anthony Richardson has to do his part. He has got to play well. Okay, and look, he's had a full extra week of prep. Okay, apparently he was reading up on the Broncos last week. So he should be fully prepared and ready to go. He should be. I don't know if he will be, but he should be. Okay, the PFF numbers, because, we love PFF, say that Anthony Richardson's 3 best games of his career have come the last 3 weeks. Okay, the Colts are playing what I think is some of their best football of the year right now. Okay, they got healthier during the bye week. Josh Downs was a full participant yesterday. Ryan Kelly has practiced both days this week. Jalen Carlisle was a full participant yesterday. If I had to make a bet, I would take the Colts to lose. I just would. I just think that the Broncos are simply better at quarterback, on defense, and a head coach. And when you're better at those 3 spots, you tend to win games. But the Colts can undoubtedly go in there and win this game. In fact, it would be the most Colts thing ever to go in there, win this game, and then, lose to the Titans next week or whoever they play next week. That's probably what's going to happen, all right? And to make Colts fans feel a little bit better about their chances, the line has moved towards the Colts. They opened as 4.5-point underdogs. They are now 3.5-point underdogs. People are clearly putting money on them. Let's hope that these people are right. Something else that will be going on tonight is we've got some college basketball going on over the weekend. I got the Kirk Cousins Bet of the Week coming up in the next segments. LeBron James stepped away from basketball. I also want to talk about the Rams and the Niners last night. First and foremost, the people that are freaking out about Brock Purdy and him not playing very well last night, here's the truth of the matter. No quarterback plays well on Thursday Night Football because 3 days to get ready for a game in the NFL is simply not enough time. Everyone's still hurt from their game on Sunday, and you don't have enough time to prep and get ready for your next opponent. Okay, the only quarterbacks that have played well on Thursday Night Football this year are Patrick Mahomes and Lamar Jackson week 1 when they were coming off an entire offseason's worth. And then last week, Lions and Packers, Jared Goff and Jordan Love, because those guys had played on Thanksgiving the week prior. And so they actually had a full week to prep and get ready. So for the people freaking out about Brock Purdy and all that kind of stuff, he'll be fine. The 49ers are still going to pay him a whole bunch of money. And it wasn't like Matthew Stafford and the Rams offense were putting up a whole bunch of points either. And speaking of the Rams, I want to revisit a take that I made at the start of the season. The Rams have won 7 of their last 9 games. They are healthy. And when they're healthy, they are incredibly tough to beat. It's why I predicted them to lose to the Kansas City Chiefs in the Super Bowl before the year started. Do I feel as good about that take right now as I did at the start of the year? Definitely not, because the Eagles are really good and the Lions are also really good. But as I said, the Rams have won 7 of their last 9 games. They're playing at an incredibly high level right now. Okay, they're able to win in multiple ways. They beat the Bills on Sunday because they scored 44 points. And they needed every single one of those because Josh Allen's amazing and he scored 6 touchdowns. It was nuts. And then they won last night because their defense held the Kyle Shanahan-led offense to only 6 points. Teams that are capable of winning in multiple ways are incredibly scary, and the Rams can do that. I don't think that the Colts can. For the Colts, their recipe to win games is pretty clear. Jonathan Taylor runs the ball well. Anthony Richardson runs the ball well, and they hit a couple big plays down the field, and their defense finds a way to force a turnover or 2. That is how the Colts win football games. For the Rams, they can outscore you by putting up 44. They can also beat you by just out-defensing you, by holding the 49ers, a good offensive team, even though that they've been very disappointing this year. to only 6 points. Okay, watch out for the Los Angeles Rams. They're coming, and they're coming fast. They've got the quarterback and the head coach needed to go on a run. And we just might see them do it. They've looked really good in these last 11 days, and I wouldn't be surprised in the slightest if that continued. Big show today. Just so much stuff to get to. When we come back here in about 4 minutes or so, I'm going to get into Indiana. They're playing Nebraska tonight. Purdue, big game tomorrow here in Indy. They're playing a really good Texas A&M team out of the SEC, the best basketball conference in the country. We learned yesterday that LeBron James is stepping away from basketball for a little bit of time. And then I'm toying around with a new segment, and I don't really know what to call it. Part of me just wants to call it Fake Rage Friday, maybe. I don't know. We'll see. I've got a little something on that later, but when we come back here in about 4 minutes, I'm going to talk about Indiana's Big Ten game tonight against Nebraska on the road. Tip-off is at 8 o'clock, and then we'll touch on Purdue and Texas A&M as well.
Unadulterated sports talk with unfiltered takes. It's the real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Ticket, 1430 AM and 99.5 HD2.
What's going on? It's the real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy's Sports Ticket. Hopefully you're having a nice week. It is Friday. Hallelujah. We're here, and tonight we get Indiana basketball going on the road to take on Nebraska, where Indiana is a 4.5-point underdog. Got my guy, Zack Gray. He's set to join the show at 11:40 today. Had to push that back a little bit for him, but he's coming on at 11:40 to talk about that game specifically and how to bet it. You're going to want to hear it, I promise. But Indiana plays Nebraska tonight, which is always an interesting thing for me because going back to when Fred Hoiberg was the head coach at Iowa State, I used to watch Iowa State games and be like, geez, I would love it if my favorite college basketball team hired that guy to be our head coach. Okay, his teams are always well coached and they're always tough. Okay, he's one of the best coaches in all of college basketball. I don't think there's really much of a question about it. And when I look at this game, Indiana versus Nebraska, first and foremost, I was very surprised to see Indiana as a 4.5-point underdog. And my take is that Indiana is more talented than Nebraska. But there's a decent chance that Nebraska wins this game because Fred Hoiberg is a better coach than Mike Woodson. And but Mike Woodson has a chance to show how good of a coach he is. Because once again, they are more talented than Nebraska. If they lose, it's probably going to be because Indiana didn't shoot the ball well enough. Okay, Mike Woodson needs to win this game because, if he doesn't, he's going to get booed again, which is kind of funny. And look, that can't be fun. I couldn't imagine doing a show and having people boo me while I was on the air, even though I'm sure some of you boo me all the time, which is fine. To make matters worse, I don't know if it's worse or better, but Mike Woodson, he's an underdog, I suppose, that gives him an excuse. We weren't supposed to win this game, even though Indiana is always supposed to beat Nebraska. I've lived here in Indiana for 3 years. That's the first thing that I knew when I showed up. It's Indiana should definitely beat Nebraska, given the history and the expectation here in the Hoosier State. Okay, the issue is that Nebraska, or the interesting thing, I don't know if it's an issue. The interesting thing about this game tonight is that Nebraska and Indiana are polar opposites. Nebraska has an excellent backcourt that can really go score it. Okay, their two leading scorers are guards. They both shoot the ball really well. Their leading scorers at 18 points a game, shooting 38% from three. Their second leading scorers at 14 points a game, shooting 43% from three. So they can shoot the basketball. Their two best players can, at least. More on that here in a minute. So when you look at Nebraska, it's all about the guards. And then you look at Indiana, and I think that we thought it was going to be about the guards. Fifth-year senior Trey Galloway, right? Bringing in Miles Rice, freshman of the year in the Pac-12 last year. Kanan Carlisle transferring in from Stanford. People were really excited, mainly about those two transfers, but there's always excitement about Trey Galloway. For some reason, I don't know. He's had one season of averaging double-digit points in his, throughout his first 4 years at Indiana. I don't know why we get so excited about that guy. But anyway, for Indiana, however, it's about the front court. It is, because Malik Reneau played really well last year. I feel like he's gotten better. We'll see. Omar Ballo, that's a guy who's played in some big games at Arizona and Gonzaga. Mackenzie Mbako, freshman of the year in the Big Ten last year. A guy more than capable of going out and getting 20 if you give him enough shots to do so. And I've seen all three of them play well against good teams like Nebraska. Those three players, Malik Reneau, Omar Ballo, and Mackenzie Mbako, those three players are going to do their part for the Hoosiers tonight. The question for Indiana, it just feels like I'm talking about last year's team. The question for them is, how are the guards going to play? Is Miles Rice finally going to play like Michael Jordan, like we all thought he would after they beat Tennessee in a scrimmage? Is Trey Galloway going to play well? Okay, is he going to actually show up and do his job? Because there's a lot of nights where he doesn't, even though, to be fair to him, there are some nights where he shows up. I'll never forget watching him play against Kansas last year. He showed up, he scored 24 points, and it was great. It was awesome. Okay, or Bryson Tucker and Kanan Carlisle off the bench going to be awesome again because they were both really good coming off the bench against Minnesota. I think about that Bryson Tucker game too often, moving without the basketball, creating easy shots for himself. It was good. It was fun to watch. Are those two guys going to be good off the bench? And are Miles Rice and Trey Galloway going to play well? Because those four players, especially Miles Rice and Trey Galloway, are going to dictate whether or not Indiana wins this game. And honestly, those guys are going to dictate whether or not Indiana has a chance to win the Big Ten, or if they're just another Big Ten team that goes, around 500 and might sneak into the tournament as like a 10 seed. Those two guys are going to dictate so much for Indiana this year because, as we all know, you have to have good guards in college basketball, even though really you need good everything. But either way, they also have to shoot the ball well from three, right? Like, this has been an issue for Indiana. It was last year. This year, they're shooting it better. They're still not doing it. They're still not shooting it great. But the thing is, playing against Nebraska, you don't have to shoot it great. You just have to shoot it okay because Nebraska cannot shoot the ball. Fred Hoiberg was on with Dan yesterday, the Dan Daka show coming up today from noon to 3. Got a really good lineup for you in that one. Fran Fraschilla coming on at 1 o'clock, and then Philip Lindsay, former Colt and former Bronco, coming on at 12:30. Anyway, Fred Hoiberg was telling Dan yesterday how they missed Tamanaga, the Asian kid who could shoot the crap out of the ball, playing for the Mad Ants now. And I'm willing to bet that the reason why they miss him is because they just don't have a ton of shooting. I mentioned earlier that their two leading scorers shoot 43 and 38% from three. No one else can really shoot it. Okay, so Indiana doesn't have to go out there and shoot 40% from three. That's not what has to happen. But they need to shoot better than 28% from three like they did against Minnesota. That means that Luke Goody better shoot it well. Luke Goody better have the game of his life. He better not suck. Because if he does, that tweet about, hey, is there any good places to go duck hunting? Like that, that tweet will be retweeted and quote tweeted so many times if Luke Goody does not come in and shoot the ball well and play well tonight. Okay, Indiana has more than enough talent to beat Nebraska. Indiana has more than enough talent to win the Big Ten. The question is just whether or not they're actually going to play to the level that their talent indicates that they can play to. I know that Nebraska is going to be prepared, and I know that Nebraska is going to play well because Fred Hoiberg, coach teams, tend to be prepared, and they tend to play well. Okay, and something that makes me even more confident in the fact that Nebraska will play well tonight is because they got crushed. They lost by like 37 to Michigan State. They lost 52-89. Yeah, that's 37. I can do math. That means that they're likely going to bounce back this week. They shot it horrendously bad. They obviously couldn't stop Michigan State. They're going to be very well prepared and ready to bounce back after getting embarrassed like that. They're back at home as well. And I think it's hard to beat good teams after they get embarrassed. And that is what Indiana is dealing with tonight. So they better be prepared. They better be ready to go. And they better play hard. And Trey Galloway and Miles Rice better play up to the expectations that people have for them. Because if they do that, then I think Indiana cruises. But if those guys struggle again, then it could be another tough game for Indiana. Purdue, they're playing tomorrow against Texas A&M. I love the fact that Purdue schedules all these tough non-conference games. I think it's awesome. But I'm excited to watch Purdue play tomorrow, not just because they're playing against a Texas A&M team that I think is going to give them a lot of problems with how athletic they are and how big they are, but I just like watching Purdue play. And I'm very intrigued to see if they've fixed some of the issues that they have or had, right? They haven't played in a week. Okay, Matt Painter, one of the best coaches in the country. And I'm intrigued to see how much better they've gotten after a week off. Do they continue to turn the ball over way too much? Are they better on the defensive end of the floor? Are we going to see a role player kind of emerge into a bigger role? Are one of these freshmen going to step up? Because Purdue has more freshmen than normal this year, it feels like. And like highly rated guys too. So like the Cox kid is good. Harris is an interesting piece. Or one of those freshmen going to step up? Is Cam Heide going to take on a bigger role? Like the question for Purdue isn't whether or not they're good. I think everyone would agree that Purdue looks like one of the 25 best teams in the country. The question is just how good are they going to be? Are they a team that can make it to the second weekend in March, or are they a team that's going to get bounced in the round of 32? Okay, and I think we're going to learn a lot about Purdue because Texas A&M is going to be tough on them because Texas A&M is big, they are physical, and they're athletic. Purdue is small, they are scrappy, and unathletic compared to a lot of other teams, especially a team like Texas A&M, who's going to be tough and is going to play incredibly hard because Buzz Williams' teams are always tough and they always play hard. Okay, I'm going to be interested to see how Purdue deals with Texas A&M because A&M is going to look to dominate the glass like they did last year and like they seem to do every year under Buzz Williams. Okay, like I wouldn't be surprised if A&M's ability to rebound is why they won the game. But here's the thing for Purdue and why they have a chance to beat anybody anytime they go out to play. They shoot the ball incredibly well. And that is once again the advantage for Purdue in this game. Texas A&M is only shooting 30% from three this year. That's not good. That's really, really bad. Meanwhile, Purdue is shooting 41% from three on the year, which is nuts, by the way. Like that's insane to shoot the ball that efficiently from three at the college level. And like that is the thing that I'm going to be looking at because I don't expect for Purdue to out-rebound A&M. I expect for Texas A&M to pile on the second chance points, but the three-point shot covers a multitude of sins. If you're able to shoot the ball well, then you can beat anybody. And that will be the thing that I look at for Purdue this week. Okay, and that's going to continue to be a big thing for them all year. Like, do they shoot it well? Do they keep the turnovers in check? And what I would argue is the most important thing is do they get contributions from players not named Trey Kaufman-Wren, Braden Smith, or Fletcher Lawyer? Okay, like those guys have been around long enough, and Trey Kaufman-Wren has shown enough this year that I just expect for all three of those guys to go score and to play well. Question is, can they get a fourth guy to show up? Because when you look at their wins over good opponents, like they have a fourth player contribute some sort of offense. Like against Ole Miss, Miles Colvin scored 20. He played a fantastic game in that game, by the way. Against Alabama, CJ Cox comes in off the bench for 90 seconds and scores 9 points. Okay, like they have to have something like that whenever they play against the better teams on their schedule. And Texas A&M is undoubtedly one of the better teams on their schedule. So they're going to need for someone to show up and have a short spurt where they score 8 points or something, just to take some of the pressure off of Braden Smith, Fletcher Lawyer, and Trey Kaufman-Wren. They need a fourth guy who can score just a little bit. I'm not saying that they have to go score 20, but if they can get someone else to score 8 to 10, that would be great. That would be awesome. That would be awesome. When we come back here in about 4 minutes, I'm going to give you the Kirk Cousins bet of the week, my favorite segment that I do here on the show. And it's really not even close. I love doing that segment, and we're going to do it when I come back here in about 4 minutes.
More winners, more often. It's the real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy's Sports Ticket, 1430 AM and 99.5 HD2.
What's going on? The real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy's Sports Ticket. Zack Gray coming up here in about an hour, 11:40. He's going to join me to talk about betting Indiana and Nebraska. And I'm going to talk about taking the Kirk Cousins bet of the week. This is my favorite bet. We've been doing it for a few weeks now. I guess 6 weeks because I'm 4-2 on the year. And yeah, like I said, 4-2 on the year. So for those of you who don't know, Kirk Cousins came out a few weeks ago and he made a very interesting statement. And ever since then, it gave birth to this segment that we call the Kirk Cousins bet of the week. He talked about going on the road and playing on the road. Here's a statement.
Walk into your trap, take over your trap, was the line he would say. You go into someone else's stadium and you try to assert yourself.
Kirk Cousins right there, talking about walking into someone else's trap and taking over their trap. Speaking of trap music, Snoop Dogg, he's not trap music, he's rap music, but he has no album out, which is cool. Anyway, Kirk Cousins talking about walking into people's traps and taking over their traps, talking about going on the road and winning on the road, something that the Falcons haven't really done this year, given that they're 6-7 and falling apart at the seams. And so ever since then, here on the Real Jonathan Smith Show, we have selected a road underdog and taken them on the money line. We are 4-2 this year. Okay, we hit our bet last week, which is always great. So we're 4-2 on the season. And this week, the Kirk Cousins bet of the week is I'm going to take the Steelers, who are going on the road to Philadelphia, to beat the Eagles outright as 5.5-point underdogs. The Pittsburgh Steelers are the best team in the NFL at making their opponents uncomfortable. The Steelers are the kings of winning weird games. They are, okay? Like every game that the Steelers play is weird in some way, shape, or form. It's either like we're going to beat the Ravens with 6 straight field goals, or we're going to beat, whoever, or the Bengals by scoring 45. Like, it's just all their games are weird. They just are. And they're going to make things tough on Philly because the Eagles want to run the football. But the Steelers have arguably the best front seven in the NFL. The Eagles do not want to throw the football for whatever reason. And the Steelers are going to make the Eagles throw it, which will make A.J. Brown really happy. He's going to be elated. He's like, oh, great, targets, finally. Even though Joey Porter Jr. is a really good corner who's probably going to have to guard him. Anyway, if the Steelers can just find a way to run the ball with Najee Harris, I love their chances at winning this game outright. I also looked at some other ones. If you wanted to take the Bills on the money line, they're 2.5-point dogs against the Lions. But I've just kind of reached this point where I'm like, I'm not going to bet against the Detroit Lions because they just find a way to win. It's really impressive what they're doing up there in Detroit, as we all know. But anyway, the Kirk Cousins bet of the week is the Steelers on the road, 5.5. Take them on the money line because that is the bet. Now, yeah, I'm still throwing around names for what I want to call this segment. I think Fake Rage Friday, maybe. I don't know. But like every time I get on Twitter, people get really, really upset about something, and it's usually college football Twitter because college football Twitter's absolutely nuts. And so the awards are starting to come out for all these different athletes, like who's winning, the quarterback of the year and tight end of the year, the Mackey Award, as it's called. And Travis Hunter, a guy that a lot of people don't like, I'm assuming in part because he plays for Colorado. Travis Hunter won the Biletnikoff Award. And people are very, very upset because there's this receiver who plays for San Diego State named Nick Nash. Nick Nash won the Triple Crown in college football. He led the nation in receiving yards, he led the nation in receptions, and he led the nation in receiving touchdowns. And feet from Nick Nash. It's awesome. And people are really upset because Travis Hunter won the award, and it's like, oh, he just won because his name's Travis Hunter, and how does the guy who won the Triple Crown not win the award? Here's the answer. And also, if you compare the numbers, they aren't that far off from each other. The reason why Nick Nash did not win the Biletnikoff is because of the conference that he plays in. I am Like, look, I love college football so much. Like, seriously, like I grew up on Saturdays. Like we didn't watch the NFL on Sundays. We watched college football on Saturdays, and then we hung out as a family on Sundays. Like that's what my family did. And so, like, I love college football. It is near and dear to my heart. I could probably argue that is where my love for sports came from. But college football fans really upset me because they're just ridiculous. And context, like, doesn't exist. Like they just take numbers and they're like, ha, this is more, therefore he is better. No, that's just not how things work. Like, there is context in terms of who you play. Nick Nash led the country in receiving yards with 1,382. Travis Hunter had 1,152, so 230 yards less. Nick Nash led the country in receiving in receptions with 104. Travis Hunter was behind him by 12 receptions. He had 92. Nick Nash led the country in receiving touchdowns with 16. Travis Hunter had 14. That's only a difference of 2. The conference that you play in matters. It just does, and it always will, and it should. It should. And look, like what Travis Hunter did, because his numbers, once again, not that far off from, Nick Nash. Like, doing that in the Mountain West, okay? Or excuse me, he played at San Diego State, not, San Jose State, not San Diego State, like I said earlier. But doing that in the Mountain West is nowhere near as impressive as what Travis Hunter did in the Big 12 against other legitimate Power 4 opponents. It's why Travis Hunter is also going to win the Heisman, because playing both ways and being one of the best defensive backs in the country and being voted as the best receiver in the country is way more impressive in the Big 12 than what Ashton Jeanty did in the Mountain West. Not saying that what Nick Nash did wasn't impressive, and not saying that what Ashton Jeanty did at Boise State isn't impressive. But what Travis Hunter has done as a receiver in the Big 12, playing against, teams like Arizona State, a team that made the college football playoff, that is more impressive than what Nick Nash did, because who you play against matters. Okay, like that whole thing, like who you play against matters. It always has, and it always will. It's why when we look at the college football playoff, it's why there's 11 group Power 4 teams and only one group of 5 team. It's because the players in the Power 4 are better than the players in, the Mountain West and the American and all those other conferences. Travis Hunter deserved the Biletnikoff Award. There's no way around it. And the outrage, what I'm going to call fake rage, doesn't stop there, because the Mackey Award went to Tyler Warren. Okay, the tight end for Penn State. And if you've watched Penn State and you've watched that guy play football, there's no question that he's the best tight end in football, or in college football. No question about it. He is the Penn State offense. But there's a guy at Bowling Green who's like number 1 in counting stats amongst all the tight ends. And people are upset because he plays at Bowling Green, and people are upset that he didn't win the award. It's like, have you seen Tyler Warren play football? He might be the best football player in the country, period. But the way that he blocks and the way that he receives, and he's played quarterback, and they've handed him the football at the goal line, and they've done all sorts of things with him. So I'm very annoyed with college football and this people being outraged by, all these awards going to Power 4 players who are playing against better teams and better competition, as opposed to these group of 5 guys who have had good years and have played well in all those things. But when you do it against lesser competition, it's just not as impressive. And the fact that people can't understand that is really annoying. It just is. Anyway, other big news from yesterday. LeBron James has stepped away from the Lakers. I find it very interesting that as soon as LeBron stepped away, Bronny James scored 30 in the G League. I don't know what happened, but that did. So my take is pretty simple with LeBron. I know people are, rumors are flying. Is it because of the Diddy stuff? Is it because of, fill in the blank? My thing is the guy looks old. Maybe he just needs a break. Like, he's played a ton of games throughout his career. By the time he retires, he'll be the all-time leader in minutes played. Like, maybe they're just going to give him a week off because he needs it. Like, I don't think that's a ridiculous thing to say. I went on Locked On Pacers yesterday with Tony East, and he asked me a pretty similar question about Halliburton. We were talking about Halliburton. He was like, do you think he's hurt? And if he is, do you think that the Pacers should just like give him a week off, maybe lose 2 games now to hopefully win more later? And maybe that's what the Lakers are doing. Like, maybe LeBron James is just a 40-year-old who's been the best player on his team for the last 22 years. And maybe all of that weight of having to carry those Cavaliers teams and those Miami Heat teams and these Laker teams over the last 4 or 5 years, maybe all that weight is just like weighing on him. And he just needs a week off because of that. Like, he is their best player. He handles the ball all the time. The offense runs through him. And look, Father Time is undefeated. Father Time always wins. There's no way around it. And we're starting to see it beat LeBron James, right? That is just the reality of what's going on with him. Colts playing against the Broncos tomorrow, going on the road. And when it comes to things that I want to see, I just want to see Anthony Richardson play well. Like, obviously, I want the Colts to win. That's the most important thing. Like, if Anthony Richardson sucks, but the Colts win, I will be significantly more happy than if Anthony Richardson plays well and the Colts lose. Okay, so let's just clear that up. But, like, this is a big game, and I'm always intrigued to see how players perform in big games when there's a little extra pressure. Okay, because they need this game. They have to have it. It is a playoff game. I was listening to DeForest Buckner yesterday talk about this game, and apparently, there were guys in the locker room or someone asked him about being in the playoffs. He's like, we're already in the playoffs. We have to win every game from here on out to make the playoffs, which is true. But at the same time, I don't know. I hate when guys say that, But anyway, I just want to see the efforts and the intensity and the toughness be there from Anthony Richardson. And I think that it will be. Okay, I think that as a whole, Colts fans are more pleased with Anthony Richardson post the benching than they were before the benching because he's been tough. He's been resilient. Okay, he's put his head down and he's picked up first downs when he's needed to. He slid a couple times, which is kind of cool. But like in the fourth quarter, when the Colts need a score, he just kind of figures out a way to do it. It's very Tim Tebow-esque. Do you remember, Tim Tebow mania, whatever they called it? Like he was going on that run with the Broncos and he would complete none of his passes, literally 0 for 3.5 quarters. And it'd be the fourth quarter. And because it's the NFL and every game is close, they'd be down by 4 and Tim Tebow would complete every single throw that he needed to. And I just remember being really young during that time and watching him and being like, if he could do this all game, he'd be awesome. And I find myself in a very similar place with Anthony Richardson. That level of intensity and focus that he has on these game-winning drives and late in the fourth quarter, even going back to week 1 against Houston when they really needed to score before the 2-minute warning to give themselves a chance. And he did because he just ran over a safety. And I remember that drive pretty well where he completed like every pass but one and he looked really good. Right. And it was in this situation where the Colts really needed it. And this Sunday, the Colts are going to need it the entire game. They are going to need that version, that fourth quarter version of Anthony Richardson where he's on time and on target, and he's ripping the ball 15 yards down the field to Michael Pittman Jr., who's running a deep over, and they need the guy who's accurate to Josh Downs on slant routes and things like that. And they need the guy that they got 2 weeks ago against the Patriots where when things didn't go well, where when A.D. Mitchell dropped a deep ball that probably would have ended up being a touchdown, or when Kylan Granson dropped a pass. And Anthony Richardson was like, you know what? That's cool. Let's bounce back and let's go. And let's go get this first down. Like, that is the version that the Colts need on Sunday. And I really hope that they get it. Because if they do, then the Colts will win. It's really that simple. He has got to play well. Because I have no faith in this Colts defense. I think they're going to get absolutely torched. I think Bo Nix and Sean Payton are going to rip through this Colts defense, like the way that Taco Bell rips through people's stomachs. Okay, like I seriously, I don't I think that if the Colts are going to have to win this game, they're going to have to win like 35-31 or something like that, which is a very possible thing. Once again, bet the over on this game if you're going to bet anything. But once again, like this Colts offense coming off a bye week, Shane Steichen has a history of doing well coming off bye weeks. They scored 28 points coming off their bye week last year, averaged 37.5 points coming off of bye weeks when he was in Philly. Obviously, a very different roster, obviously a much better roster than what he has here in Indianapolis. But like he's very capable of putting together a master performance coming off of a bye week. So I expect for both of these teams to score a lot of points. The thing with the Colts defense, though, and I talked about this briefly on Dan's show yesterday, or maybe it was 2 days ago. I just don't expect for Gus Bradley to come out with any wrinkles. I'm just kind of expecting the same cover 2, cover 3. Maybe we'll blitz a fifth guy from time to time and things like that. Meanwhile, for the Broncos, I expect for them to throw some weird crap. Vance Joseph, the defensive coordinator for the Broncos, I expect for him to throw some weird crap at Anthony Richardson. I just do. Like, I fully expect for them to, fake blitzes and to give him these weird, exotic looks. And I'm not going to go into detail because I don't know what makes it look exotic versus what makes it normal. But I expect for them to throw wrinkles at Anthony Richardson, things that he hasn't been able to see on tape. And meanwhile, for the Colts, I don't expect them to do that. And I think that small differences like that are why the Colts will lose and the Broncos will beat the Colts on Sunday, therefore ending their playoff hopes, which means we get to talk about the NFL draft next week. I really hope not. I don't want to talk about the draft. That's the last thing that I want to talk about. What I do want to talk about is more Colts and Broncos, and that's what we're going to do when we come back from this break. Zack Gray set to join the show at 11:40. He's going to tell you how to bet the Indiana and Nebraska game tonight. Should be a lot of fun. We love it when Zack comes on. He always does an excellent job, and he's been on a heater as of late. He came on a couple weeks ago and was very honest and said that his bets hadn't been hitting. His luck has flipped. I wouldn't call it luck. He's figured it out. He started hitting some bets. So 11:40, you want to listen to that segment because he's going to give you a winner. When we come back here in about 5 minutes, we're going to talk more Colts and Broncos.
Do you have 3 ex-wives and your current trophy wife wants a life insurance policy 3 times the size of the policies you had to purchase for your previous mistakes? If so, you need to call Big Lou at Term Provider, 800-859-3220. Big Lou is intimately familiar with your problems, and if you're 50 to 60 years old and in reasonably good health, a $1 million policy should only cost about $100 to $200 per month. Big Lou may have a solution for your previous policies as well. You may even save enough money to lighten the load on your new $1 million policy. Remember, call Big Lou. He's like you, except he's only on number 2. Call Term Provider at 800-859-3220. That's 800-859-3220 for $1 million in term life insurance that you can live with. Call Big Lou at 800-859-3220. 800-859-3220.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's time for...
It's the Real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Ticket, 1430 AM and 99.5 HD2.
What's going on? It's the Real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy Sports Ticket. Hopefully you've had a nice week. I know I have. So I bought this thing. It's called an OmniFizz, and it's awesome. It's incredible. Okay, so I've put on some weight. I lost a bunch of weight. I put it all back on. I'm going home for the holidays. I would like to not be called fat by my family because that will happen if I show up fat. So I've been trying to lose weight. What I've noticed is that I really like soda, not because I like soda, but because I like the fizziness of it. And so I bought this thing called an OmniFizz, and you can like carbonate drinks. That's what it does. So it's awesome. Like, I got it yesterday. My wife and I, we went out to dinner. I hadn't seen her yet. And I think I just talked about it for like 20 minutes, which is incredible because I don't talk about anything that long that's not sports related. And it was just, it got to a point where my wife very lovingly was like, Jonathan, will you please shut up about that stupid thing that you bought? And then afterwards we went to the store so I could buy a bunch of different juices and I could carbonate them and see what they tasted like. It was awesome. Anyway, that's why my week's been awesome. Anyway, Colts, Broncos will hopefully make my weekend awesome. And I was pretty clear yesterday. I still feel this way. But the Colts and the Broncos, I feel like the Broncos are going to win. I feel like they're going to cover the 3.5. That line's come down. But there definitely is a world where the Indianapolis Colts win this game. Okay, the Denver Broncos are the SMU Mustangs of the NFL. Okay, both have a horse as their mascot. And if the Broncos wind up making the playoffs, it'll be because they beat a bunch of bad teams without ever beating anyone that's good. Just like how SMU made the college football playoff because they beat a bunch of bad teams in the ACC, and the two good teams that they played, they lost. And so my take is that the Broncos haven't beaten anybody good. So there's some hope for the Colts in that regard. But the Colts haven't beaten anyone good either. The Broncos are 1-5 against teams over 500 this year, and the Colts are also 1-5 against teams over 500 this year. Okay, the Broncos' one win against a team over 500 was the Buccaneers. And for the Colts, it was the Steelers when Justin Fields was playing quarterback. The hope for the Colts this week is that the Broncos continue to play bad against good teams because we've seen the Colts look like a good team at different points throughout the year, more so here in the 3 games since Anthony Richardson returned from being benched. Okay, and even, the Broncos' one win over a team over 500, it was the Buccaneers. We're 7-6. Okay, like, come on now. So sure, the Broncos are 8-5, but they appear to be incapable of beating good teams. I know the Buccaneers are 7-6, but I think the Colts are better than them. That's beside the point. And as I said, we've seen the Colts look like a good team over the last 3 weeks. So part of why they've looked better, part of why the Colts are 2-1 over the last 3 weeks is because of Anthony Richardson and his return. Part of why he's been so good has been because of his legs. Okay, his ability to escape pressure and avoid negative plays and to run the ball well and to avoid sacks and all those things has been really big for this offense throughout the year. And it'll be important this week because the Broncos have a blitz percentage of 31%. They have blitzed their opponents on 31% of their dropbacks this season. That is the 4th highest mark in the NFL. So that means that Anthony Richardson is going to face pressure. That means that this offensive line is going to have to block well. And thankfully, they don't have to block great because of Anthony Richardson's athleticism and his ability to avoid pressure. And that's going to be vital this week. Here is Colts head coach Shane Steichen talking about the importance of Anthony Richardson avoiding pressure.
I think he's done a hell of a job. Even when he has had pressure, he's done a great job escaping it and creating plays with his legs and get out of the pocket. What he's been able to do these last couple of weeks, he continues to just keep going and rising. His level of play has been picking up. He's doing a hell of a job.
Is the next step for him to, maybe anticipate where the pressure's coming from or maybe start to recognize where it's coming from?
Yeah, that's part of the process too. The weekly preparation. We go through the blitz meetings, we do the walkthroughs, we do the practice, give him multiple looks, so he knows where his issues are at.
Shane Steichen right there talking about the Colts and dealing with this heavy blitzing Broncos defense, once again, the fourth highest blitz rate in the NFL. And Anthony Richardson's ability to avoid sacks, like Shane Steichen was talking about in that clip, and his ability to identify blitzes, like Shane Steichen was talking about in that clip, is going to be vital for the Colts in this game. Because when you look at the Denver Broncos and you look at the quarterbacks with which they have surrendered the most points to, it's been guys that are mobile. They gave up 26 points to Geno Smith. They gave up 23 to Justin Herbert, 41 to Lamar Jackson, and 32 to Jameis Winston. All four of those quarterbacks possess the necessary athleticism to avoid the rush. Okay, when you look at the Broncos' 5 losses, 4 of them have something in common, and then their 5th loss came to the Chiefs, which, that game didn't make any sense because none of the Chiefs games make any sense. But those 4 other losses, when you look at them, it's when the Broncos didn't meet their sack average. Okay, the Broncos average 3.6 sacks per game. That leads the NFL. They lead the NFL in total sacks with 47. Okay, looking at those 4 losses, with the exclusion of the Chiefs because they sacked Mahomes 4 times in that game, when they don't get to 3.5 sacks or more, or when they don't hit the over on 3.5 sacks, they tend to lose. And when they do get to that number, they tend to win. Let's look at their wins. Okay, they had 7 sacks against the Buccaneers. They won that game. That's their one win over a team with a record of 500 or better. They had 5 sacks against the Jets, 6 against the Saints, 5 against the Raiders, and then they had 3 sacks in 3 of their other wins. The only team that they beat without recording 3 sacks or more was the Panthers, who aren't good. Okay, the Broncos, and that number 3 is so important to them in the sack column. Like, it's incredibly important. The Broncos are 7-1 when they record 3 sacks or more. Okay, like, that is the thing for them. If the Colts can give up 0, 1, or 2 sacks, I love their chances at winning this game, because this Broncos defense survives off of generating negative plays, mainly on passing downs. Okay, and when you look at this Colts offensive line, it should be relatively healthy, right? They've had two whole weeks off, which is big. That's a big deal, right? So guys are getting healthier. Quentin Nelson, a guy who's played every game this year and has had a pretty decent year, like he's got 2 much needed weeks off. Ryan Kelly is hopefully going to be back. He's practiced the last 2 days. Bernard Raymond played against the Patriots. Dalton Tucker's been playing. It doesn't seem like Braden Smith is going to play this game. Probably, potentially not even the rest of the year, is one of the reports that I saw yesterday. He's got something personal going on. But Chris Ballard drafted an offensive tackle in the 3rd round this year out of Pitt by the name of Matt Gonsalves. Okay, he held his own at right tackle. Last game against the Patriots. Played left tackle a little bit before that. Like, he's been not great, but not terrible. So he should hopefully be able to hold his own again, right? So, like, the offensive line is shaping up to hopefully be able to give Anthony Richardson some time. And on the downs where they don't, if you want to look at the one thing that Anthony Richardson has done well the entire year this year, it's avoid pressure and throw the ball away when he needs to. Okay, the PFF numbers as well have looked better for Anthony Richardson because, PFF, that's what matters. We talk about PFF, I feel like, every week on this show, mainly in the context of offensive linemen. But anyway, per PFF, Anthony Richardson's 3 best performances of his season, I believe of his career, have come in these last 3 weeks. Okay, the Colts are playing their best football of the year right now. Okay, they got healthier during the bye. Ryan Kelly has practiced both days this week. Josh Downs was a full participant yesterday. Michael Pittman Jr. was a full participant the last 2 days. Jalen Carlisle, he was a full participant yesterday. They activated him off IR. If I had to make a bet, I would bet on the Colts to lose. I would. But they can definitely win this game because they've gotten healthier. Okay? They've had a week off to look at this tough Broncos defense and figure out where the holes are to poke in it. Josh Downs, their best receiver, he's coming back. Okay? They've got the pieces that they need. Anthony Richardson's put together, some good games here in the recent weeks. They can go into Denver and win this game. The issue is I don't trust the Colts on defense, and I trust Bo Nix more than I trust Anthony Richardson. That's really the simple line of it. With that being said, Anthony Richardson is more than capable of coming out and throwing for 280 yards and a couple touchdowns and running for another, and the Colts winning this game. And, the people are seeing that, right? Like the line in Vegas has moved toward them. The Denver Broncos opened as 4.5-point favorites. They are now only 3.5-point favorites. So that means people are betting on the Colts, the sharps, the people who get in early, the people who usually win bets. They've gotten in on this before anyone else. And so hopefully the Colts are able to win this game, because I don't want to talk about the draft next week. Like I keep getting on Twitter and I'm seeing all these mock drafts, and it's like, oh, like they've got the Colts 14th taking whoever. No. I don't want to see that. I want to see the Colts in the playoffs playing meaningful football in January. That's what we want to see. Right? And hopefully the Colts can get this done. They're definitely able, or they're definitely capable of doing that. The question is just whether or not they're actually going to. Can they play like a Rams team last night who was fighting for their playoff lives? And the Rams have been doing it for the last 9 weeks. They've won 7 of their last 9. That's a good team. The Rams, I don't know if you watched last night, but the Rams beat the 49ers. And the 49ers had a player named Devondre Campbell who just quit. He was like, I'm done. I'm not playing anymore. And he just walked off the field, which is nuts, by the way. We were all outraged when Anthony Richardson pulled himself out for a play. This dude just quit. He was like, I'm gone. He pulled an A.J. Brown. He just left, which is crazy. He'll get cut. That'll probably be the end of his career, because you can't have a guy on your team who does that. But that tells you how things are going in San Francisco. Not very well. Meanwhile, the Rams, they're rolling. They've won 7 of their last 9. I'm bringing them up because, before the year started, I gave a whole bunch of takes. A lot of them are going to be wrong. Actually, no, not a lot of them, just some of them. Anyway, one of them was that the 49ers would miss the playoffs, and that's going to happen. They could finish the season with a losing record. Anyway, the other thing that I said was that the Chiefs were going to beat the Rams in the Super Bowl to three-peat, and that dream is alive and well. It's a dream because the Lions and the Eagles are better than the Rams. But hey, one game, who knows? And the Rams are hot right now, right? They've won 7 of their last 9. And when they're healthy, they're tough to beat. That's why I predicted them to lose to the Chiefs in the Super Bowl before the year started. Their defense has gotten better as the year has progressed. The offense is clicking. Maybe not last night, but against the Bills, they put up 44. So I don't know. I think that's proof that that they're clicking. And then last night, they win because of their defense, and they hold this 49ers offense to only 6 points. And teams that can win in multiple ways are scary. And the Rams can do that. Okay. They've also got the quarterback and the head coach that you need to go on a run. And we just might see them do it. Right. And the one thing that I love about the Rams that I wish was true about the Colts is that ability to win in different ways. In order for the Colts to win football games, it's pretty clear what they have to do. They have to run the ball well, and Anthony Richardson's got to hit a couple deep shots. Right? That usually puts them to somewhere between 24 and 28 points. And then you just hope and pray that the Colts defense forces a turnover or 2. That is the recipe for success for the Indianapolis Colts. Run the ball well. Anthony Richardson makes a couple big plays down the field, and the defense finds a way to force a turnover. That seems to me how the Colts win every game that they've won this year. Seriously, because they don't have a defense that's going to hold an offense to 6 points, a good one at least. And they don't have an offense that's going to go out and score 44. They don't have either one of those things. So they've got to do things like run the ball and force turnovers in order to find a way to win games. If they can do that on Sunday when they go on the road to Denver, then they can definitely do that. It's a 4:25 start, which is awesome. A 4:25 start's amazing. You can get up. You can go to church. You can go get lunch with your friends after, and then you can go home, and it'll be great. It'll be great. So when we come back here in 4 minutes, Nebraska taking on Indiana tonight. Can't wait to watch this game. I think we're going to learn a fairly decent amount about Indiana. And then, no matter what happens, everyone's going to overreact on Twitter, and it's going to be fantastic. So my thoughts on Indiana versus Nebraska when we come back here in about 4 minutes.
Often imitated, never duplicated. It's the real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Ticket, 1430 AM and 99.5 HD2.
What's going on? The real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy Sports Ticket. Thanks for tuning in. No matter how you're tuning in, I greatly appreciate it. You should tune in on YouTube, though. I'll be honest. Indy's Sports Ticket. Head over there, just jump in the chat. You never know what's going to be discussed in that chat. Right now, they're throwing me recipes for my drink carbonator thing. So if you have any, throw them my way. Anyway, Indiana going on the road tonight to take on Nebraska. And obviously, I'm pulling for Indiana because the more they win, the better this show gets. But I got to be honest. I'm a little torn. Fred Hoiberg's one of my favorite coaches in the country. I love watching his teams play. They're always well coached. They're always tough. And he's quite simply one of the best coaches in the country, no question. The thing is, Indiana should beat them tonight. I know that they're 4.5-point dogs, but Indiana should always beat Nebraska. My guy, Zack Gray, he's going to join the show here in about 20 minutes, and he's going to tell you which side to bet. And Indiana is more talented than Nebraska. When you bring in the number one ranked, recruiting class or transfer class in the country, you should beat a lot of teams, and Nebraska is on that list of teams that you should beat. And look, if Indiana loses tonight, because of how much talent is on this Indiana team, the narrative will be that Indiana lost because Coach Woodson got outcoached by Coach Hoiberg. Like that is what is going to happen. People will be outraged. How can you lose to Nebraska, 3 times in a row or whatever, or 4 times in a row because they lost to them 3 times last year. And people are going to be really upset, and Mike Woodson will get booed the next time he shows up to Assembly Hall, and that can't be fun. Can you imagine someone booing you at your job? I can't. That sounds terrible. And to make things interesting, I kind of figured that the Hoosiers would be favored tonight, by like 5.5, 6.5, just because of how much talent that team has. But that is not the case. If you ask Vegas, who tends to be right, they aren't right about everything. The Hoosiers aren't supposed to win this game, which probably drives Indiana fans crazy. But Indiana is a 4.5-point underdog tonight, which is incredibly interesting. Just like the thing that I really find interesting about this game is less or so the line and more of how these teams are constructed and what they rely on. They are total opposites. Nebraska has got 2 awesome guards that can really score it. Meanwhile, you got Indiana, whose front court is awesome, right? Like when you look at Indiana and you look at the front court, I expect for Malik Reneau, Omar Ballo, and Mackenzie Mbako to play well every single night because I've seen them do it. Malik Reneau was a good Big Ten player last year, right? Like Khalil Ware was probably the best player on Indiana's team last year, but Malik Reneau was right there. He's a guy that you can just give the ball to, let him post up. If he shoots it over his right shoulder, he's probably going to score, right? Like that's the kind of guy that he is. Omar Ballo was very impactful on a good Arizona team, and he won games when he was at Gonzaga. He's a guy who's played in big games and has played well. So I expect him to play well when he's playing at Indiana. Mackenzie Mbako, highly, recruited guy coming out of high school, and he was the Big Ten Freshman of the Year last year. Like that's a guy who the Hoosiers can rely on. Like those 3 players for Indiana, I expect to play well every single night, and I expect them to do so tonight at 8 o'clock against Nebraska. The question for Indiana is, how do the guards perform? How are the guards going to play? Is Miles Rice finally going to be Michael Jordan, as he was described when he was coming over to Indiana from Washington State? Is Trey Galloway finally going to play well? I mean, it's the guy's 5th year. Like he's had one season, his sophomore season, where he averaged double-digit points. That's it. Is he going to play well? Are Bryson Tucker and Kanan Carlisle off the bench going to be awesome again? These 4 players, specifically Miles Rice and Trey Galloway, those 2 guys, are going to dictate whether or not Indiana wins tonight, and those 2 players are going to dictate whether or not Indiana is just another solid Big Ten team or if they can legitimately win the conference. Those 2 guys have to play well consistently, and they have to shoot the ball well. Okay? Like, look, they don't have to shoot it great. Like, Purdue's shooting 41% from 3 on the season, which is absurd. Indiana, they don't need to do that. If they can be 36, 37, 38%, Indiana is so good in the front court and on the interior that they're going to win a lot of games. But they can't have games like they had against Minnesota, where they shot 28% from three. Okay, like they can't have that. They can't have that tonight. Nebraska is not a great shooting team. They're only shooting 29% from three on the year. But like I'm willing to bet that they're going to shoot it a little bit better as the year progresses because their two best players really shoot the ball well. Okay, like their leading scorer averages, 18 a night. He's a 38% three-point shooter. And their second leading scorer at like 14 a night is a 43% three-point shooter. Okay, like those guys are going to get a lot of shots up. And if they do, then they're probably going to make some threes, which means that Indiana has got to shoot the ball well. Like they're not playing Minnesota again, who shot 18% from three when they played against Indiana on Monday night. This is Nebraska. They are going to shoot the ball well. And Indiana has to have some sort of match for that, which means Luke Goody has to play well. He better shoot it well. He better, especially since he decided to go duck hunting on his day off instead of getting in there and getting some shots up. Indiana has all the talent that they need to not only win tonight, but to win the league. Okay, they are more talented than Nebraska. They're more talented than Purdue. I don't know if they're more talented than Michigan. That's a really good team. But you get my point. Okay, they are incredibly talented. They pass the airport test where if you get off a plane and you're walking around and you see all of them, you're like, yeah, that's a basketball team. The question is just whether or not they will play at the level that their talent allows them to. Will they be prepared? Will they hold on to the basketball? Will they turn it over too much? Will they, find Malik Renew when he's got it going? Will Miles Rice take good shots? Will they finish at the rim? Like, will they play at the level that their talent allows them to? I know that Nebraska is going to be extremely well prepared, and I know that they're going to play well tonight because Fred Hoiberg coaches his teams well, and they are almost always prepared, and they almost always play well. Their last game against Michigan State was an exception to that when they got beat 89-52. To me, that means that they're likely going to bounce back this week. And Indiana has to be ready for it. It's hard to play a good team. Jonathan, how do you know that Nebraska's good? Because they're favored by 4.5. That's how I know. Okay, it's hard to play a good team after they get embarrassed, especially when they're going back home. And that is what Indiana is dealing with tonight. They're going on the road to a place that has a good basketball team and recently got embarrassed. Okay, so they're going to be revved up. Nebraska's going to be ready to go. They want to erase that memory of getting beat by 37 against Michigan State. And they want to grab their first Big Ten win. So Mike Woodson better have his players ready to play. Actually, no. Those players better be ready to play. This whole bullcrap of coaches, they get you ready to play. It's simply just not a thing. Okay? Those players, Trey Galloway and and all the other guys better be ready to go. Okay? Like if they're filming dances on the bus on the way in, then it's like, yeah, chalk this game up as a loss. Because I can guarantee you, Nebraska's not doing that after getting beat by 37. They're out there working. Okay? They have to be ready to go because if they don't, they can and will lose tonight. Not a doubt in my mind. Purdue is also playing this weekend. They haven't played in a week, which is great. And my take for Purdue, who plays tomorrow afternoon here in Indy, is they have a chance to pick up another good win against a good team out of conference, which is big because there's not a lot of great teams in the Big Ten. Like we think Indiana is going to be good. I think Nebraska is going to be good. Michigan is good. Wisconsin, they seem like they're going to be good. Oregon does too, but Big Ten, not as deep as normal. So picking up these, good non-conference wins is important. But the thing that I'm interested to see with Purdue is, did they fix their issues? Right? Purdue hasn't played in a week. I'm sure they've practiced a fairly decent amount. Matt Painter, one of the best, is one of the best coaches in the country. And I'm just intrigued to see the tweaks that they've made after this week off. Do they keep the turnovers down? Are they better defensively? Do we see a role player take on a larger role? Okay, like the question for Purdue isn't whether or not they're good. The question isn't whether or not they're going to win games. The question is, how good are they? And is this a team that can make the second weekend of the tournament, or is this a team that gets upset in the first round or loses in the round of 32? That is the question for them, and I'm intrigued to see what they look like against A&M because their makeup is just very different than Purdue's. Texas A&M is big, they are physical, they're athletic, and they are incredibly tough. Purdue, on the other hand, they're scrappy, they're small, unathletic compared to a lot of other teams, especially a team like Texas A&M. Okay, and it's going to be a really tough out for Purdue because Buzz Williams teams are always tough. They just are. And I'm just interested to see how Purdue deals with the size and athleticism that Texas A&M is going to have. Because Texas A&M is going to look to dominate on the glass like they tend to do under Buzz Williams. Okay, I wouldn't be surprised if A&M's ability to rebound was what won them the game. Okay, the advantage for Purdue is that Texas A&M doesn't shoot the ball very well. Okay, A&M's only a 30% three-point shooting team on the year. Purdue's at 41%, which is nuts. Okay, and so for them, that is the advantage that they're going to have over everybody. They can simply show up, Purdue, to any gym in the country and be like, you know what we're going to do? We're going to shoot 45% from three. And no matter what you do offensively, you won't be able to keep up because we're just going to shoot the ball that well. And Saturday may be a day where they need to do that because I would just be really shocked if Purdue won the rebounding battle on Saturday. So they better shoot the ball well, right? That is the great equalizer. Okay. And their ability to shoot the ball, it'll continue to be a big thing for them all year because I like Trey Kaufman-Renn, but they don't really have much other interior scoring. Okay. Fletcher Lawyer is a guy who wants to get shots up from beyond the arc. Braden Smith, same thing. Right. But I do think that the bigger thing for them that I want to see is just a cut down on the turnovers. They turn the ball over way too much for a team that has two starting guards that are juniors and have played in big games before. Okay. Do they keep the turnovers down? That is the biggest thing I'm watching for Purdue when they play tomorrow. The other thing is, do they get contributions from someone not named Trey Kaufman-Renn, Braden Smith, or Fletcher Lawyer? Okay, for them to beat better teams in the country, they have to have a fourth guy that can provide some sort of offense. Okay, you watched their game against Ole Miss. Why did they win? It wasn't because Trey Kaufman-Renn played well, even though he did. It wasn't because Braden Smith played well, even though he did. It wasn't because Fletcher Lawyer played well, even though he did. It was because Miles Colvin was awesome, and he scored 20-something points against Alabama. Why did they win that game? Because they only turned the ball over 3 times. That's the biggest reason. But the other thing was that C.J. Cox comes in for 90 seconds and hits 3 threes in a row. And it's okay. And then, they went up by 13, and that was kind of all she wrote. When, Purdue plays teams like Minnesota and teams at the bottom of the Big Ten and just lesser teams, they don't need Miles Colvin or Cam Heide or C.J. Cox or anyone like that to go crazy. Okay, that's not what they need. They need an extra contribution from someone to beat better teams like Texas A&M, like when they play Michigan, like when they play Indiana. Okay, because I like Braden Smith, I like Fletcher Lawyer, and Trey Kaufman-Renn's a good player, but they just need something a little extra. And so I'm curious to see if they're going to grab, a role player and try to put them in a bigger role to see if they can get some consistent scoring from a consistent fourth guy as opposed to hoping that someone else shows up and plays really well. When we come back here in about 4 minutes, my guy Zack Gray is going to join the show. We're going to talk a little bit of sports gambling. It's going to be great. That's not true. Zach just texted me and said he cannot come on. What a bummer. What a buzzkill. I love that guy. But he does have a play. He does have, a bet that he's going to give out. He texted it to me. I will share that with you when we come back here in about 4 minutes.
Welcome back to the real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Ticket, 1430 AM and 99.5 HD2.
What's going on? Happy Friday. Here from me, Jonathan Smith, here on the real Jonathan Smith Show. Hopefully you have Friday plans. I know I do. My wife's gone tonight. Oh, man. Which is like, it kind of makes me sad, but I won't lie to you. A night where I can kind of do whatever I want is pretty awesome. So, you know, I'm going to produce the Dan Dockett Show, which comes your way here in about 20 minutes. I'm going to go to the gym. I'm going to go home. I'm going to get a McRib on my way home because the McRib is awesome, okay? And you cannot convince me otherwise. And then I'm going to go play basketball. It's going to be great. Can't wait. Meanwhile, my wife's going to be doing, hanging out with her friends, which, good for her. Anyway, my guy, Zack Gray, who usually joins the show, he was supposed to come on today, but he had some stuff pop up. He texted me anyway, and he was like, Jonathan, tell the people that I have a bet tonight. My guy, Zack Gray, is a professional sports gambler. You can follow him on Twitter at ZG The Grapevine. He's got a Patreon linked in his bio where he helps you make better bets by giving you tools to make better bets. Anyway, so he texted me, and he said to let the people know to take Indiana plus 4.5 tonight against Nebraska. That's his play of the day. He's usually right. He's been on an absolute heater here as of late, so I would listen to him. I know I'm going to. I'm going to bet Indiana probably as soon as my show is over. Anyway, Indiana, they go on the road tonight. They're playing at 8 against Nebraska, a team that beat them 3 times in a row last year, which is unacceptable, and hopefully that does not continue. Anyway, oh, come on now. I got people. So if you want to head over to YouTube and search for Indy's Sports Tickets, that's the YouTube channel. You can watch my show live there, and you can jump in the chat and comment on the things that I say. And my guy Roswell said that the McRib isn't good. My question is, Roswell, have you had one? Because if you haven't had one and you've never experienced the greatness that is the McRib, then you are just very simply missing out. Okay, it's so good. Like I tried to explain this to my wife the other day. She didn't get it. She was like, Jonathan, why do you want a McRib? And I'm like, because they're really good. And she's like, there's just no way that the McRib is really good. And I'm just like, have you ever had one? And she said no. And I was like, oh, so you don't know. That's really what's happening here. So it's so good. Okay. I don't care if the meat's, not actually ribs. I don't care. I just care that it tastes good. Okay. That's very simply all I care about. So I'm going to do that. And then I'm going to go play some pickup hoops. Really active day for me today. Working out, pickup hoops. Is the McRib a good thing? Probably not, but I'm going to work it all off. Okay. Anyway, John Buzzard chiming in. John, you have a lot of great ideas like playing pickup hoops, but I've had the McRib. It's like molded wet dog food with stripes. That's brutal, Buzzard. That's brutal. It's good stuff. Anyway, I'm gonna eat some good food on Sunday too when I sit down to watch the Colts and the Broncos play. Look, it's a playoff game. It is. And the last time we saw the Colts play a playoff game was last year, week 18, when they played the Texans. They had an opportunity to win the division for the first time in the Chris Ballard era. And they didn't. I mean, they didn't. They had an opportunity to, and a missed swing pass to Tyler Goodson was the end of it. And we're going to probably talk about that call for a long time. Well, no, that's not true. We're going to talk about that call until the Colts make the playoffs once again. Okay, and and the Colts have an opportunity to erase that from our minds this year, right? Beat the Broncos, beat the Titans, beat the Jags, and then beat the Giants in week 18, and you're in. It's really that simple, right? Like the toughest game on that stretch is their game against the Broncos this Sunday, as we all know. People are really high on the Broncos, right? Because that defense is the second best scoring defense in the NFL. They're only surrendering 18 points per game on average, which is that's phenomenal. Okay. And then you look at the fact that they lead the NFL in sacks. And then you look at the fact that Bo Nix has been on a heater here recently. There's a lot of new Bo leavers out there. Okay. Kenny Dillingham, the head coach at Arizona State, who coached Bo Nix at Auburn and Oregon, had a quote about Bo Nix where he said that he's got so much dog in him, he makes other people uncomfortable, right? So like the approval rating of Bo Nix has never been higher than it is right now. Okay, everyone wants to see. Not, I would say everyone wants to see the Broncos win, but they have a very high approval rating, right? Sean Payton, has a lot of conviction in drafting Bo Nix. The defense is really good. They're paying Russell Wilson all that money, but it doesn't matter because they're winning games and everyone loves them right now. And I think that when people look at the Colts, it's like, oh, Anthony Richardson's completing like 47% of his passes this year. Their defense is giving up like the second most yards in the NFL at like 380 per game. Like how can you pick the Colts? And what's really interesting is this is going to wind up being like very much a sack man bet where everyone takes the Broncos at -3.5. It kind of feels like Vegas is just begging you to take Denver, but I'm going to be a sucker and I'm going to take them because I like the Broncos in this game because the Broncos have the holy trinity of winning football games. They have a better defense than the Colts do. They've got a better head coach than the Colts do, and they have a better quarterback than the Colts do. Like that is the reality of the situation. They're also at home. Denver, not the easiest place to play. The altitude always impacts things a little bit. It's not supposed to be cold. It's supposed to be like 57 degrees, which is awesome. Even though I kind of wish that it was like snowing because I like Anthony Richardson in those conditions more than I like Bo Nix in those conditions, but that's beside the point. I am incredibly interested to see what's going to happen in this game because the other reality of it, while I do think that the Broncos are a better football team, the Broncos haven't beaten anybody good. Like they are the SMU Mustangs of the NFL. Okay, they've got the horse mascot. The SMU Mustangs made the college football playoff because they beat a bunch of bad teams, and when they played good teams, they lost. The Broncos make the playoffs this year, it'll be because they beat a bunch of bad teams and lost to all the good teams that they played. Okay, like the fact that the Broncos haven't beaten anyone good all year is why the Colts have a chance to win this game. It's why they should have some hope. The issue for the Colts is they haven't beaten anyone good either. Okay, the Broncos are 1-5 this year against teams over 500, just like the Colts are. The Colts are also 1-5 against teams that are over 500. Okay, the Broncos' one win against a team that has a winning record was against the Buccaneers way back in like week 3. And for the Colts, it was against the Steelers in week 3. Okay, that is the hope for the Colts this week. The Broncos haven't beaten anyone good all year. Even the Buccaneers, sure, but they're 7-6. They aren't very good. That whole division sucks. Okay, the Broncos are 8-5, but they just kind of appear to be incapable of beating good teams. Meanwhile, like we've seen the Colts look like a good team at some points this year, more so over the last 3 weeks, right? Going 2-1, Anthony Richardson leading game-winning drives and those things. And part of why he's been so good is because of his legs, and that his ability to run is going to play an incredibly big role in this game on Sunday. His ability to escape pressure and avoid negative plays, and obviously the quarterback run game is going to be important because it's been more important since he's come back from being benched, right? But it'll be even more important this week because the Broncos love to blitz, right? They lead the NFL in sacks with 47. It's 3.5 sacks a game. The Broncos blitz on 31% of quarterback dropbacks this year. Like 3rd and long, they are coming to get you. Okay, and the good thing for the Colts is like they've got receivers who can get open, like Michael Pittman Jr. does a good job of getting open. Josh Downs creates separation really well. People tell me all the time about how Adonai Mitchell is like one of the best separators in the NFL. Don't know why he doesn't have more catches and why the production hasn't been up, but apparently that guy gets open. But the thing is, the offensive line has to block long enough for those guys to get open, and Anthony Richardson has to extend plays long enough to get those guys open. It's going to play an incredibly large role in this game. And here is Shane Steichen yesterday talking about Anthony Richardson and his ability to avoid pressure and how big of a deal that's going to be.
I think he's done a hell of a job. Even when he has had pressure, he's done a great job escaping it and creating plays with his legs and get out of the pocket. What he's been able to do these last couple of weeks, I mean, he continues to just keep going and rising. His level of play has been picking up. He's doing a hell of a job.
Is the next step for him to maybe anticipate where the pressure's coming from, or maybe start to recognize where it's coming from?
Yeah, that's part of the process too. The weekly preparation, we go through the blitz meetings, we do the walkthroughs, we do the practice, give him multiple looks, so he knows where his issues are at.
That was Coach Shane Steichen right there talking about Anthony Richardson and his ability to escape pressure and extend plays and do all those things. Anthony Richardson's ability to avoid sacks and identify blitzes could be the thing that make or breaks the Colts in this very important playoff game for them if they want to, even have a chance at making the playoffs. Because when you look at the Broncos and you look at their losses, they're all against teams where they didn't record a ton of sacks. And when you look at their wins, it's against teams that they were able to generate sacks against. 3 sacks. That is the number for the Broncos. The Broncos are 7-1 when they record 3 sacks or more. Okay, like just look at their wins, right? It was 7 sacks against the Buccaneers, 5 against the Jets, 6 against the Saints, 5 against the Raiders. And then they had 3 sacks in 3 of their other 4 wins. The only team that the Broncos beat this year without generating 3 sacks or more was the Panthers, who aren't very good. Okay, once again, the Broncos are 7-1 when they record 3 sacks or more. Okay, Ryan Kelly, though, is hopefully going to be back this week. Bernard Raymond, Dalton Tucker, Quentin Nelson should all be good to go. Braden Smith doesn't seem like he's going to play. He's apparently dealing with something super personal to him. But Matt Gonzalez has been pretty solid at tackle these past few weeks. Hasn't been great. Hasn't been terrible. The PFF numbers say that he's done well. And as you know, we love PFF. Who doesn't love PFF, as some may call it? And in addition to that, like the Colts have gotten healthier. Like health has not been terrible for them this year. Hasn't been great either, but Josh Downs is probably going to play this week. Michael Pittman Jr. has had back issues and shoulder issues and all those other things. And, like he's now had 2 weeks off, and hopefully he's going to be a little closer to 100%. Ryan Kelly, his practice window was open. He's practiced the last 2 days. Jalen Carlies was a full participant yesterday. Like they are healthy. Right, they are, and that's a big deal. Like the saying in the NFL isn't, the best team doesn't win, the healthiest team does. And the Broncos, they've had great injury luck all year as well. But this game, it's going to be close. I'm still leaning Broncos to win and cover that 3.5 point spread. But the line has moved towards the Colts, and Zack Gray, who usually joins the show on Fridays, he's taught me a lot about sports gambling and kind of how things work. Usually when you see the line move in a certain direction, that line is going to cover. So like if you got the Colts a plus 4.5, you should feel great because the line's now 3.5 because a bunch of people have put a lot of money on that, right? So it seems like people are kind of leaning towards that. We'll kind of see what happens there. Another story that we're definitely tracking here on the Real Jonathan Smith Show is LeBron James stepping away. Look, I don't know what's going on. But look, he's LeBron James. He can do whatever he wants. He's the best player on that Lakers team. I think that he may just be taking a week because he needs it. The dude's 40. He's been the best player on his team for the last 22 years. Okay, like he may just be taking a week off because he needs it. Like he's still the Lakers' number 1 option. The entire offense still runs through him. They haven't cut down on his minutes. Like there is no rest for LeBron James, for the LeBron James-led Lakers, and they're bad. Right, like he also made you be like, you know what? We suck. Let me save myself so I can play next year somewhere else and maybe even win another title. Right? Let me save myself so that so that when I get traded, I still have something in the tank because there's a lot of rumors milling about the Warriors monitoring LeBron James and potentially making a trade for him. I don't think that the Warriors are a LeBron James away from winning the title, but watching Steph and LeBron play together, look, I'll be honest, it was a blast during the Olympics. If that happened, people have been making a big deal about the ratings in the NBA, how they're down. The reason why is because it's too hard to watch them. Like put every local team on a local network where people don't have to pay to watch them, and the ratings will go up. It's really that simple. Like that's just a common sense thing. But anyway, look, if he gets dealt, like, I promise he'll be back. LeBron James is taking time off because the Lakers suck. He knows that they aren't very good, and he wants to save himself for the future. Okay? I love John Buzzard's thoughts on this. The manager in me says, suck it up and get to work. Which, look, like, I don't like this. I hate the load management stuff. It really upsets me because, like, LeBron James is making, like, $60 million this year to not play. and just because he doesn't want to. And like, I get it. He's old. He's worn down, all those things. But at the same time, like you're paid to play games, no matter how good or bad or sad your team is. Like, you should go out and play. But hey, he's LeBron James. He can do what he wants. That's going to do it here at the Real Jonathan Smith Show. Thanks for taking the time out of your day to tune in and listen. I'll be back again on Monday from 10 to noon, recapping whatever happens in Colts Broncos. Hopefully it's a Colts win, but I wouldn't bet on that. The Dan Dockett Show starts at noon. A couple great guests lined up. Philip Lindsay, former Colts and Broncos running back, at 12:30. Fran Fraschilla coming on at 1 o'clock. Should be a great show. Cannot wait for that. The Dan Dockett Show comes your way here in about 5 minutes. Thanks again for listening to my show. I'll be back again Monday from 10 to noon. Actually, no, I'm 10 to 1 on Monday, which will be even better. 3 hours talking about the Colts and hopefully their win over the Denver Broncos. The Dan Dockett Show comes your way here in 5 minutes.